Hey guys, it's Miss Abby here for another book talk. I wanted to put this one out a little earlier, but I really wanted to wait until the ALA, American Library Association Youth Media Awards were announced, which was last week. So I'm ready to make those book talk pitches for you right now. And actually the first book that I have to talk to you about is one that I've already talked to you about. The book that won the Newbery Medal this year is When You Trap a Tiger. Yeah! Remember I told you guys about this book in my last book talk where I was talking about kind of the books that I thought might win? I was totally right. I called it and I'm really proud of myself. So if you don't remember, I will just refresh you really quick. This book is about Lily and her family. They move in with her Korean grandmother, Halmoni, to be close to her as she's getting older. You know, you want to spend time with the loved ones that you have while you have them, right? So her Halmoni is just like really wonderful and vivacious, and she loves her so much, and she tells these really great, vibrant stories that usually have like tigers and fun Korean folklore kind of things in them. But as she's there longer, Lily starts to see this tiger, and she knows she's not hallucinating because she's like communicating with the tiger, and she kind of finds out that the reason why this tiger is here is to get those stories, specifically the stories that Halmoni bottled up. And the stories are kind of about her own sadness and trauma. And Lily makes a deal with the tiger that if she can release those stories, then her Halmoni will be healed. And it's got a lot of really beautiful elements, magical realism. If you're into that kind of thing, I totally am. I love it when it blends that like realistic stuff with fantasy. It's my favorite. That is in here, and it's also a good coming of age story. So if you really like those kind of growing up narratives, this is a good one too. And you don't have to know anything about Korean folktales to understand this book or to get into it. It's just a really wonderful, great read. And especially as you get kind of further on into it, it's just like, oh, you can't put it down. It's so, so exciting. So that's the book that won the Newbery Medal this year. I'm really proud of it. I was not right about my Prince prediction, but the book that won is also really great. It's called Everything Sad is Untrue, and this is by Daniel Nayeri. This book is about Khosrow, and he's an Iranian refugee. He's living in Kansas in this book, but he and his family, his mom and his sister, fled from Iran in the night and came to America. So this is really the story of him telling his American classmates in Kansas who don't understand him and frankly aren't really trying to understand him, telling them about his life. And not just about his life, but about Iranian life in general. That's what's really, really cool and unique about this book. It may kind of seem like it jumps around in time and place, and it doesn't really have a linear plot, but it includes lots of beautiful elements, not just about himself or his family, but stories from his people. And it's like it's just kind of like all of these memories and stories that all kind of, and little snapshots, like Polaroids of chunks of his life that all come together into this beautiful tapestry that just tells you not only about his life, but really about like the entire immigrant experience, leaving the home that you have and coming to America and how that works for people, what that experience is like, which I'm not sure if any of you have had that experience, but if you haven't, I think it's really important to learn about that perspective. I would say this one falls into like contemporary or maybe even historical fiction, but it's definitely like a mostly true story, which it says down here, a true story. So check that one out if you want to check out the Prince Medal winner from this year. The next book that I have to talk to you about is the book that won the Coretta Scott King Award this year, Before the Ever After by Jacqueline Woodson. Jacqueline Woodson is a phenomenal author, and she has won different awards for different other books. Brown Girl Dreaming was, oh man, that's one of my favorite books, and that one's written in verse, which is really cool. This one is written in verse as well. You'll see it's a novel in verse. And this tells the story of ZJ, Zachariah Jr. and his family. Specifically, it's the story of his father, who is a professional athlete, a former professional athlete. And he starts to really early on in the book starts to behave erratically, right? Strangely, he's getting headaches. He's having a really hard time recalling things. His memory has big like blank spots in it, and he starts to just kind of lash out and get angry and afraid. And ZJ gets afraid too, because I mean, you love your dad. You don't want him to be feeling this sense of dread all the time, right? Or, ooh, that would be terrifying. So I don't know how much you guys know about CTE. Or traumatic brain injuries, but that's something that you will learn a little bit more about in this book. Jacqueline Woodson did an amazing job showing that even though sports are awesome and fun, and I love watching football, go Packers, next year, right? They can be really, really dangerous for the players. Specifically football, there are so many concussions, and that's what you find out about ZJ's father in this book, is that he had suffered many concussions while he was playing, and as a result he has this undiagnosed traumatic brain injury, and that's what's causing these strange behaviors for him. It is just beautifully written. It's kind of like in the vein of like a Kwame Alexander, where he does like Booked and Rebound, those ones that are like sports books in verse. So if you liked those ones and you like to read contemporary fiction, I would say this one is good, especially too if you love sports and like me want to see sports, especially football, become safer for the players. This would be a good one to check out. So that's Before the Ever After. And then the last book that I'm going to talk to you about today, I was going to talk to you also about The Rise and Fall of Charles Lindbergh, but I've already talked about that one in my last one, and I thought, come on, Abby, don't do two books the same. So the last book that I'm going to talk to you about is called Show Me a Sign, and this one is historical fiction as well. This book was beautiful to read. I just loved reading this book. This is by Anne Claire Lazat, and this is the story of Mary. She is a girl who is deaf, and she's living in a colony of deaf individuals in the early 1800s on Martha's Vineyard. And when the story starts, she doesn't realize that there's any other way to be. She doesn't realize that there are people who don't use sign language, because everyone in her community uses sign language to communicate. And so what happens is a young scientist comes, and he is there to research, and he is a really hard character to read because he is not compassionate. He's there to research because he's trying to research her infirmity, her inferiority, and see why she can't hear. And she's not really a willing test subject, and that's kind of hard to read. And there's just one of the best things about this book is it doesn't shy away from issues like prejudice, and there's racism that happens all around us all the time. And in this book, it's very clear, and she never shies away from those things. And I think it's important to read about those topics. Reading about other people's experiences really can make you a more empathetic person. And I think that's just the most important thing that we can be. So I think too, this book really highlights the danger of misunderstanding someone and letting that misunderstanding lead you to just not appreciate or include or like even someone else because they're different. So if you would be interested in reading this book, I would highly recommend it. It's beautiful. If you like historical fiction, if you like reading about others' experiences and kind of getting in their shoes and walking around a little bit, this book is perfect for that. That's all the books that I have to talk to you guys about. I hope you check one of them out. If you do, send me an email, muskegolibrarian@gmail.com, or you can send me a message on Facebook, or you can pop into the library and let me know what you thought. See you next month, guys.